What's good, YouTube? It's me, Bush, good back in this video. Today, I want to show you guys a really awesome top 4 match from the YCS Japan Nagoya, which took place a couple of weeks ago. And it's actually a match between Rescue Ace versus Fire King. Now that Fire King structure decks are coming out, I want to demonstrate, how powerful this deck actually is, especially overseas in Japan. This was a couple thousand person tournament, and it was actually only best of 1, as they always are in YCS Japan fashion, for whatever reason. I don't know, but yeah, I guess Maxi format was best of 1. It's a little weird. But without further ado, I just want to show you guys the duel in question, because there are actually a lot of cool things that we can learn from looking at the OCG and seeing how they play. So I've sped this up to 2 times speed just to make sure everything goes as fast as possible. Gonna go ahead, and it looks like the Fire King player wins a roll, so they're gonna go ahead and activate Wanted in the draw phase to play around Drone Lockbird, adding the Dark Witch. Using the effect of Dark Witch, I would imagine, to send a card from their hand to the graveyard, which then allows them to special summon out the Dark Witch. Effect will activate on the field to set a copy of a Sinful Spoils Spiral Trap card. Gonna go ahead and probably set the original Sinful Spoils here. Yep. I'm gonna send the Garunix, by the way, the new Sacred Garunix, which actually has a trigger effect in the graveyard to bring itself back when a monster is destroyed on the field. So it's just like a free investment, free discard off of Dark Witch. Goes ahead and activates the original Sinful Spoils. Going to search out a copy of, instead of actually going for the Baby Garunix, which is a level 1 fire target that you use for Fire King, you actually go for the Snake Eye card here, because this allows you to Stratos for a copy of the Baby Bird. And since the Baby Bird can actually special summon itself out from your hand as a free trigger effect when a card you control is destroyed by a card effect, it makes it so you get a free Snake Eye Ash in rotation, like a free body, right? So he actually gets hit by the main deck rule here. Obviously, Drill's being made in best of 1, for obvious reasons, which actually doesn't hurt this deck quite enough, because you can do so much. Like, this deck allows you to extend so much after the initial adding off of the Sinful Spoils engine. You actually don't need to do a lot of adding. It just turns off your Fire King Island, but you can still play. So we're going to see exactly that. Just going to skip ahead a little bit here. They do go ahead and use the effect of the new Unicorn in their hand, so they're going to activate that, or the new Kirin Razor, and then that effect is going to pop the baby that they added in their hand, and then Garunix on a new chain is going to trigger from the graveyard to special summon itself out, and then on a new chain, when it's special summoned, as a trigger effect to actually destroy a monster from your hand, field, or deck. So you can actually destroy the Barong, which has a mandatory trigger effect in the standby phase. Can actually trigger the effect to send the Fire King Barong, who activates in the next standby phase to mandatorily add a copy of a Fire King card from your deck to your hand. So very, very nice setup for the next turn there. And then going to link off the Garunix and the Kirin to go into Salamangreat Sunlight Wolf, which is really, really nice, because it's effectively a free recursion, right? You get to summon the Linkuriboh using a level 1 monster, and then you can add back the Kirin, and Kirin actually has an effect during the main phase. It's a lot like the Shavara, the Unchained Shavara, which allows you to pop a card and play during your opponent's turn. Now you go directly into the new Prisoner Princess, which is a very, very powerful card, who allows you to revive any fire monster from your graveyard, non-targeting, so really, really nice. And then from here, you're going to go right into the Ambla Whale. So this is sort of the combo. The thing with the Princess is that it does lock you into fire monsters while she's on the board, so linking her off into the Ambla Whale, and they're just going to pass there with the 3 cards in hand, including a Kirin. Standby phase, you get to activate 2 effects that are mandatory. Number 1, the Baby Garunix, which adds itself back to your hand when it's destroyed by battle or card effect. Number 2, Barong, which allows them to add a Fire King card from their deck to their hand. So all of a sudden you have 5 cards in hand again. It's insane recursion. Very, very critical follow-up. One thing to note is that these effects are mandatory, so you are actually responsible for reminding your opponent to activate them. So this is just crazy setup, because they're going to go ahead and add a copy of Arvada, which is a Fire King that allows you to negate a monster effect when it's on the board. And that combos really, really well with Kirin, because when Arvada is destroyed, you can actually resurrect a Beast Warrior, Winged Beast, or a Beast Monster from your graveyard as well. Even though the effects are negated, it's still really, really important as a card that pairs very well with the Kirin that's in your hand, because Kirin can actually destroy monsters in your hand in addition to on the board. So it's a lot better than Shavara in that case. Opponent's going to go ahead and activate Bonfire, going to add Populous, which is a new Snake Eyes card that's absolutely busted. It's basically a better copy of Dark Witch. Gets hit by the Max C, but they have the Ash. I can't believe this is like a best of 1 format with Max C in rotation. I'm still like kind of like my jaw's dropping, but I guess, power to the OCG. They're just crazy like that. Populous, when it's added to your hand by card effect, except by drawing, you can actually special summon them out. So that gets special summoned out. The effect is when you use Special Summon or Normal, you can add a copy of a Sinful Spoils spell card from your deck to your hand. So you can actually add the original Sinful Spoils, a lot like how Dark Witch sets it, only you don't have to send a card. And then when Populous is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can actually bring it back as a continuous spell card in your spell trap zone. So that just sets up the original Sinful Spoils really easily, because you're able to activate that immediately and just send the copy of Populous to the graveyard for cost, for a free send, right? So really, really crazy interaction there with Linkuriboh or with Relinquished, obviously. Ambler Will, by the way, does have a relevant effect in this case as well. When he's destroyed by a card effect, you can target a Link 3 or lower monster in either player's graveyard, resurrect it, and then when a Link 3 monster is destroyed while he's in the graveyard, you can banish it to pop a card non-targeting. So very, very nice interactions there. Going to summon out the Rescue Ace Hydrant, a lot like how Rescue Ace does currently. And then the Rescue Ace Hydrant being summoned actually does trigger one key piece of layered interaction in the Fire King player's graveyard, which is Prisoner Princess, which says, when your opponent special summons a monster, you can activate this card effect in the graveyard, target one monster your opponent controls and one fire monster you control, pop both, and special summon this card back from the grave. So it's absolutely crazy. This deck is a lot like Unchained, where you just have so many effects, you know, Yama in the graveyard, and everything's kind of layered. You know, just this one innocuous-looking Ambler Whale in the field actually has a lot of interactions hidden behind it, because you have Prisoner Princess, and then Ambler Whale's effect is going to trigger, allowing them to special summon back a Link 3 or lower monster, in this case targeting Sunlight Wolf, as well as other effects that might trigger in the hand or in the graveyard, right? They do have card effects like a Runix, which can come back when a card is destroyed, and then that on the field allows them to Foolish a card, destroy directly from the deck. So in this case, they're actually going to trigger the effect of the Baby Runix in the hand, which we spoke about earlier. You can special summon it from your hand as a trigger effect when a monster you control is destroyed. So they're going to bring that back. Use the effect to add a copy of Fire King Immolation, which I believe is called Sacred Fire King Fire or something in the TCG now. But this is a quick play spell card that allows you to target cards up to the amount of Fire King monsters you control and destroy them. So really, really nice popping interaction there. I just love how they finally have popping effects in spell form. So if Mystic Mine or like trap cards were a thing, they'd actually have some counterplay. You know, like before we just had to rely on monsters. So something like a Majesty's Fiend or like a Vanity's Fiend or like a Mystic Mine is really hard to deal with. So moving forward, our opponent, the Rescue Ace player, obviously chained the alert to add a copy of the Preventer. They're going to try and special that out, but our Fire King hero is going to activate the effect of the Kirin in the hand to actually pop the Sunlight Wolf, and then from here, they are actually going to trigger the effect of Garunix, who can bring itself back. Now, Preventer is on the board, but obviously they still have the no quick effect, because they do have to control another Rescue Ace monster. So the Rescue Ace monster, Rescue Ace deck is looking like they're in a very, very tough situation, but they're also going to trigger in effect the Ambler Whale, the effect to banish and pop a card. So they're going to go Chainlink 1 to pop, Chainlink 2, Garunix brings itself back, and then they're going to non-targeting pop with the Ambler Whale, so they're going to be able to pop on the monsters. And then Garunix will actually allow them to destroy a card from their deck, which is nuts, because you're destroying cards. Linkuriboh is going to hit the grave, so obviously the player on SP Little Knight, I would imagine, because, you know, using a Link monster allows you to banish from the field to the graveyard. And then they're going to actually send a copy of Kirin, who revives a copy of a Fire King Avatar Arvada directly from the hand that they added off of the Barong, right? Because you can special summon a monster from a hand when Fire King Avatar Kirin is actually destroyed. So very, very nice interaction there. Another key piece of thing to notice is that Kirin, when he's actually used the effect to summon something from hand or graveyard, after that you can actually pop a card on the field. So they go ahead and pop that Preventer, just getting the bodies off of the board. Preventer's effect triggers in the graveyard, but they're actually going to use Arvada's effect to get that free negation by destroying one of their Fire Kings. So the Fire King Baby Phoenix, which go trigger again, coming back perpetually in the standby phase. Very, very nice there. And Arvada obviously cannot negate and destroy, so it's always useful to use it against, you know, soft things like in the graveyard effects, so you're kind of not going neg in that regard. But then the Rescue Ace player actually does slam down a hard-drawn copy of Turbulence as the last two cards in their hand, which will actually allow them to set some cards, because it looks like the Fire King player has actually exhausted all of their resources or all of their pushes on that turn. All the interruptions are gone. Basically, all they have is a bunch of bodies, a bunch of effects that might trigger in the standby phase, two cards in hand, including the Sacred Fire King Immolation, which they are aware about. So it's actually kind of a hard scenario for the Rescue Ace player, because they actually have to do their best to clear this board, right? And Prisoner Princess, obviously, in the graveyard just comes back over and over again, so that's another threat as well. So Fire King has insane follow-up, insane consistency, and insane, like, diligence against all of the decks, right? It's just so solid. It has so many angles to play, and it's very, very hard for decks to deal with, especially when you splash in the Sinful Spoils engine. So it's a very resilient deck is the word I think I'm looking for. They're going to go ahead and resolve the Turbulence. Just going to set 4 cards here so we can actually skip ahead. They are going to set 3 traps, actually. You see they're also playing the Extinguish in addition to the other traps as well, and then a copy of Emergency. So that's kind of interesting that they're actually playing. What is that one card called? Yeah, Reinforce. So their main deck can Reinforce. And then from here, it looks like the Rescue Ace is in a somewhat stable position trying to stabilize, but then you have to remember that the traps are just not very good against Fire King, because you can negate, sure, but you don't want to pop anything because that just like triggers the effects. And then like, you know, emergencies just follow up, and reinforce is kind of like a protection card to try and survive. The Rescue Ace doesn't really have a lot of follow-up, right? So it's very, very hard for the deck, I think, to clear a board without something like an SP Little Knight. And they're kind of just reading all the cards right now. It's very, very hard for them to tackle the board and get rid of everything. So skip ahead a little bit more. Turbulence is going to crash over the Prisoner Princess just so they don't get the effective revive something during their main phase, which is obviously very, very important. And then from there, they're going to activate the copy of Emergency, which actually hasn't been activated. Very interesting. Going to send the copy of Turbulence to summon the Hydrant, so that way their traps are actually alive. From there, actually going to activate the copy of Extinguish. Obviously, Rescue Ace Hydrant being face up allows you to activate a trap card during the turn set. Popping the Arvada, and then Arvada's effect actually didn't trigger theirs because it cannot trigger in the graveyard while Hydrant is up on the field. They're going to be able to add a copy of the Rescue Ace Airlifter and then use that for the normal summon. So that effect will allow them to add another copy, I assume Emergency, just so they have follow-up. But it could also be Rescue, I guess, for a potential interrupt. Yeah, it's just Rescue. Okay, makes sense. Going to set that. So they do have 4 back rows. Not really the strongest because they did have to burn that Extinguish on the same turn to try and clear the board. See, this is the thing with Fire King. It's still hard to clear the board. And luckily for them, the Fire King player actually misplayed and put the Kirin in that relinquished Anima column. So that's actually going to be taken. But they still can't deal with the Garunix, which is actually a very, very powerful card. Oh, never mind. They're just going to Hida and SP. I guess that deals with the Garunix. Let's forget about SP Little Knight. It's such a broken card. And so is Hida, actually, in this upcoming format. So if you guys want to get Starlights, now's a chance to do it, really. From here, they are going to just go into the SP Little Knight, I imagine, just get rid of the Garunix. But, like, SP Little Knight plus, like, 3 back rows, of which only basically, what, like, 1 is a disruption, maybe Rescue as well. I don't think it's really enough. Gonna go into Appaloosa instead. I guess they're just choosing to set the Extinguish. Oh yeah, it's true. You can reset the Extinguish off of the Emergency. I always forget about that. So they do have something to try and pop the Garunix. And then from there, it looks like they just passed the turn. So Fire King's going to draw for turn. And then standby phase, they have the Baby Garunix, which does come back over and over. Such a busted little card that does so much for the deck. I'm so glad we finally got it. This was originally a card art featured in Circle of the Fire Kings. And we just got this card as a card, a monster form, 10 years later, which is really, really nice. We already had like the mini Baby Garunix, but this is like the baby chick Garunix. Immolation is going to be activated, targeting Garunix, and I assume Appaloosa here, just get it off the table. Obviously, the inability of the Rescue Ace monster the Rescue Ace player to clear the board of the Fire King player has backfired. They're going to chain the effect of Rescue here, just targeting the Rescue Ace Hydrant to bring that back. And, well, Immolation is just such a powerful card. Being able to pop multiple cards on spell form that's searchable is just very, very nice as a Fire King card, I think. And it also has the effect where you can banish it from your graveyard to actually prevent the Fire King monster being destroyed by a card effect. So additional value there, definitely very useful. Chain the effect of Called by the Grave, just banishing that Rescue Ace Hydrant there. Remember that Called by is actually at 2 copies in the OCG, which is absolutely busted. But obviously Maxi is a critter they have to deal with. Going to use the effect of the Garunix on pawn normal summon here to try and add a copy of a spell card. I assume Fire King Sanctuary into Fire King Island, which would be the standard setup play, the standard starter play for this deck using just a baby chick. So there is a judge call being made and the game state was around a little bit. It was actually not their normal summon for the Baby Garunix, but rather the trigger effect special summon when a card they controlled was destroyed, aka the Garunix off of the Sacred Fire Immolation, right? So that actually is what happened there. And then our opponent's going to chain the effect of Emergency to special summon out, I assume, a Preventer from the deck. Yep. That way, attributing off the Preventer will allow them to use the effect in the graveyard to special summoning the banished Hydrant, which kind of circumvents the Called By. But unfortunately, obviously, Called By does persist for the consecutive turns, so that means Rescue Ace Hydrant is still negated even if an opponent gets another turn. But that being said, they're in desperate mode situation trying to survive here in Hot Lava. Yep, the Baby Phoenix is going to add a copy of Fire King Island. And then on a new chain, the Prisoner Princess is actually coming back because Rescue Ace Hydrant was special summoned, right? When your opponent special summons a monster, you can special summon back Prisoner Princess and also pop that monster that is special summoned. But they're going to chain Reinforce, so it's not affected by monster effects, which is just like a desperation move here. But then on a new chain, they're going to bring out the Garunix here, because the Princess still has to resolve as much as possible. So they still pop their own Baby Phoenix to special summon them back. Brunix is going to come out, destroy a copy of Kieran. Kieran's effects going to trigger, bring back the Arvada, and also on resolution, pop the last set, which is contained, non-targeting, obviously. Now Arvada's on the table. They haven't used their normal summon yet, and this game is all but over. Best of one. It's just crazy. I can't believe it's best of one, but what a crazy match. There's a lot of back and forth. Obviously, the Fire King players seem to be somewhat in control for the most part of the duel. It seems that the sets that you set off of the Rescue Ace cards are just not enough against a deck like this. It just doesn't mind about their cards getting popped. So they are going to trigger the effect of Snake Eye Ash here just to bring it back. And then add a copy of the Phoenix. It really doesn't matter what happens here because the game's over. Or rather a card of Populace, which they do play in the Fire King deck as well. Special out the Populace. They can add if they want to, but I guess they don't have any more targets. Using these monsters just to link off into Hida. And that's just game, right? Just reborn back any big fire monster. Or just make anything for that matter. So yeah, not much that the Rescue Ace player can do here. But yeah, I just want to show you guys this duel. I thought it was really entertaining. They're going to summon back the Turbulence and just make Underworld Goddess and just swing for game with their normal summon, I think. So it just shows like how resilient Fire King is, especially with the new wanted stuff, the simple slows. This deck is actually really, really broken. I'm not sure how Konami's going to address it. The power creep of Yu-Gi-Oh has entered another stage, it seems like, with all these broken Link 3 fire monsters as well as the new support for simple spoils and, you know, the Fire King structure deck. So yeah, what do you guys think about Fire Kings in general and also the format? What do you guys think will be the format for the upcoming YCSs for next year in TCG once we actually get Phantom Nightmare? Love to hear your guys' thoughts. Other than that, we'll see y'all in the next video. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.